Welcome everybody to this session of the Purple Flag Forum, where we will be discussing the great indoors. So let's get straight into it. As of literally just a couple of hours ago, we've had confirmation from First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, that Scotland will be moving from level 3 to level 2 COVID restrictions from Monday, with the exception of Moray. So this is quite significant because this is basically confirming that there will be a major relaxation of indoor hospitality, including the sale of alcohol. So in Scotland, indoor hospitality is already open, but with tight restrictions, closing at 8 o'clock and a ban on the sale of alcohol indoors. That is going to change from Monday. Merely a few hours before that, we got confirmation from the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, of confirmation that England is also on course for the next phase of reopening. So that means the return of indoor hospitality on Monday. So it is all happening thick and fast. And there is one particular reason why. Also yesterday, Public Health England were able to confirm that recipients of just one dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine is 80% less likely to die from COVID. Very similar levels to the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. Now, obviously, the Pfizer vaccine was out first, so there's more known about the impact of the Pfizer vaccine in real world conditions. And what Public Health England were also able to report yesterday is that those people who had had their second dose of Pfizer, the chances of dying from COVID dropped considerably after the second dose. So you're 97% less likely to die from COVID if you've had 2 doses of Pfizer in comparison to if you'd had nothing at all. So that's incredibly successful. And it's really starting to show now in terms of the public health situation. Just yesterday, it was reported that in England, Northern Ireland, and Scotland, there were no reported deaths from COVID. Now, we take it as granted that some of the reporting early in the week can be slow because of the sort of slowness in collating figures over the weekend, but still, it's evidence that as things stand, notwithstanding the impact of variants, we're nearly there in terms of escaping this public health nightmare. Just 4 deaths were reported in Wales, but hospitalizations in Wales are extremely low. And I think just recently there's been a recent report that in terms of fatalities in Wales, again, incredibly low. So it's all really positive. The UK as a whole has been able to move from level 4 status to level 3 status based on advice from the Joint Biosecurity Centre. That's also information which hit yesterday. So it's all positive news. Even in Ireland, which has tended to be the most cautious of the nations we work with, there's been an announcement very recently that things will start reopening in Ireland. That started yesterday as parts of the town centre economy started to reopen, especially in terms of public buildings, galleries, close contact services. And we're looking at retail reopening from next week. So it's all moving in the right direction. So what we can do now is we are turning our attention to the reopening of indoor hospitality and trying to figure out what that means for our town centres and how we can support that process. And this reopening cannot come soon enough. And I think that's been pretty much evidenced by some of the weather we've had recently, which has meant the closure of some hospitality businesses across the UK because of that unpredictable weather. There also continues to be challenges around capacity, with some businesses underperforming because they just cannot get the scale, relying only on outdoor space, and some businesses that are unable to open at all because they have no outdoor space, especially in some town and city centre locations where space is at a premium. So that reopening cannot come open enough. So what's the state of play across our network? So England reopening 17th of May. Ireland, unfortunately for indoor hospitality, we have no date yet. The latest we've heard from the Irish government is that this is being considered for the end of June at the earliest. Maybe there's a chance this is brought forward depending on the improving public health situation, but we have to wait and see. Northern Ireland penciled in for the 24th of May, but on that we are awaiting confirmation. For Scotland, as I've said, indoor hospitality already open, but with tight restrictions. Those restrictions will also be relaxed on Monday, 17th of May. Wales to indoor hospitality open 17th of May. So we're nearly there for a number of our destinations. So we're asking the questions, what do place managers and purple flag destinations need to be aware of when it comes to the reopening of indoor hospitality? How can we support businesses to reopen indoors both safely and profitably? So in order to be able to understand how we can do this, we will be speaking to a number of people now across the industry who can give us insight straight from the businesses themselves. In terms of Purple Flag, this cuts across two of our core criteria, and that is well-being and appeal. So that is health and economic vibrancy. And indeed, the tension between the two continues to be felt across a number of sectors. So we found out that very recently, I think as recently as yesterday, the Welsh Independent Restaurant Collective has written to Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford to request that social distancing measures be relaxed to align with that of England, and I think of Scotland as well. And also that business support measures need to be boosted to support those businesses in terms of their reopening. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go to our speakers now who can give us that insight on what's happening on the ground with the businesses and shed some light on some of the issues that we need to be aware of. So can I start by introducing Paul Shaw, who's the CEO of the Restaurant Collective. Paul, do you want to tell us about some of the major challenges, firstly, of the sector, especially around reopening, and then move on to how the Restaurant Collective is trying to support the sector through making sure there's better coordination amongst businesses in the sector?
Yes, of course. Thank you, OJ, and thank you for having me with you this afternoon. Firstly, an apology in advance. If my connection is a bit unstable, please give me a wave. I'm having to work off 4G this afternoon. My Wi-Fi very considerately crashed this morning, so apologies for that. Hopefully I'll model through. So, I mean, in terms of the way the independent restaurant sector in the UK has been affected, you don't need me to tell you it's been a rough ride. Around only between 20 and 25% of independent restaurants across the UK were able to reopen in April with outdoor dining. And many of them have struggled with the weather. So the reopening of indoor dining can't come soon enough, but that does bring with it a range of challenges to make sure that all of our venues are safe and COVID ready and ready to welcome visitors back. They completed risk assessments, etc. Generally speaking, I think there's a good deal of optimism now in the independent restaurant sector, at least for the short term. Our belief is that it will be a good summer for restaurants, that there will be good numbers of guests and diners wanting to get back out there, wanting to get back into their local restaurants and gastropubs and supporting local businesses, because, you know, first and foremost, our membership, we're all small business owners. That's what we are, that's what we do, and we need the support of our local communities to really help us get back on our feet. So we think that there will be a good summer ahead, but there are challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges actually that we're facing at the moment is staff shortages, and we're seeing right across the board that it's getting harder and harder to recruit the right trained experienced staff. Many of the staff that were employed in the sector were European and have gone home. Other people employed in the sector have, because of an enforced long-term layoffs, have found other careers and other options to follow. So there is a real shortage, and we're hearing from some members that they're not going to be able to actually open all of their restaurants. We've got members with 5 or 6 restaurants. They're only going to be able to reopen 4 to be able to provide full service whilst they search for staff. And of course, the cost of staff has risen very quickly as well. So we're seeing kitchen staff, chefs, and front of house staff. The rates of pay have probably gone up by about 20% since pre-pandemic levels. So there are some structural challenges. The bigger concern for us and our members is longer term, that what will happen to the restaurant sector after the summer. If the summer is going to be busy, we're going to have a lot of guests and visitors. It will quieten down in the autumn, and that quietening down will coincide with a number of things. The business rate holiday will have ended. Anybody that had furloughed staff will be paying for their staff again come the autumn. Any deferred corporation tax or VAT bills will start to fall due, and any members that have taken out loans of one sort or another, civils loans, bounce back loans, the repayments will start to fall as well. So we fear that there will be a second dip in the autumn. Regardless, and that's not even before that's before we even consider what might happen with COVID-19 if there was a 4th wave or a new mutation of it that affected the sector. So we're not out of the woods yet. We have some fairly sort of major long-term concerns, and so we're very mindful that our members need to get a lot of support in the summer whilst they're really able to generate as much revenue as possible, and hopefully that will provide something of a cushion when business starts to go down a bit in the autumn. So that's our thinking. I mean, there are other issues that we are aware of, concerned of, certainly in terms of mental health and well-being, and how employees in the sector have been affected by extended lockdown. What it will be like for them getting back into the workplace. It's a very high pressure, high energy, relentless kind of environment, and that can have some knock-on impacts on mental health. So these are things that we are talking to our members about and looking at working with them and with other partner organizations to provide support where necessary. In terms of Restaurant Collective and who we are and what we do, I mean, we are a brand new organization. We went live at the beginning of April. So we have just arrived. We've been a while in the planning. We started planning this pre-pandemic, but essentially we've been formed in order to provide support and to champion the interests of the independent restaurant sector across the UK. And we have a range of benefits that we provide to our members, ranging from support with software, with their digital presence online, with deals, discounted deals in our deals marketplace that enables members to get access to the kinds of products and services that they need to use on a regular basis, but for a much lower price than they would normally expect to find them. We will be releasing and publishing the UK's first and largest directory of independent restaurants in the next month or so, and we'll be using that to really raise awareness amongst consumers of the independent restaurant sector, and particularly on a local level, to generate support for independent restaurants up and down the country. We have a mentorship program, so we will be pairing up less experienced restaurateurs with more experienced colleagues who can help them grow their business and plot a path towards whatever it is they want to achieve in their business. We'll also have a regional focus whereby we will have teams working across all of the regions of the UK to really zero in on the issues that affect restaurants and restaurateurs in those areas and work with them to help resolve those issues. We're connected up with UK Hospitality so we can be the voice of independent restaurants to the wider hospitality sector and to get representation through lobbying via our connections with UK Hospitality. So we have a lot of ambitions. We have a lot of plans. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We are run effectively by our members. Every member that joins us acquires a share in the business and a say in how the collective develops and what its focus should be. So the more members that we have, the more representative we can be. As I say, it is early days, but we estimate that there are around 60,000 independent restaurants across the UK. And we aim to have about 40% of them as our members within 3 years. So once again, thank you for inviting me. I hope that's been useful. And if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to try and answer them.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Paul. That's great. And again, I apologize to anybody that might be able to hear children behind me. Paul, I hear what you say about the longer term challenges, especially around debt and financing. And unfortunately, that's a common story we've heard across hospitality and leisure sectors. And unfortunately, and it seems like a really difficult long-term challenge, which we will need a solution for, because there are too many businesses that are at the moment struggling in terms of that financial resilience. How can you see a role where the place management industry can help you? And I'm thinking about business improvement districts, councils, licensing authorities, in enforcement. What can we do to support your sector?
Well, I think in the very simplest of terms, at the moment, it's about spreading the word and raising awareness that there is an organisation that exists specifically to support the independent restaurant community. As I say, the more members we have, the more representative that we can be. And then what we will have within our regional groupings are committees and organisations that can then team up with local bids and town centre planning organisations, local chambers of commerce, and work together to start to address specific local issues that are relevant to them and their area. So I think being connected is really important, and thank you for connecting us up. Going forward, information, knowledge, you guys collect a lot of data. You guys are really clued into what's going on in towns and cities up and down the country. And the more information that we are able to provide to our members to enable them to prepare for the future, prepare for what may be coming down the road to them in their local area, and mobilize whatever resources need to be mobilized in order to respond to that, then that's great for us. So I think spreading the word and providing information and data and insight would be extremely valuable to us and our members.
Yeah, that's understood, and I do know our members see communications, especially with smaller businesses who won't always necessarily have the resource to know everything that's happening out there. Our members see that as a key service, a key way of supporting their smaller businesses. Paul, that's brilliant. You're welcome to stay with us for as long as you can. Your internet's actually holding up quite well. I had the same issue with my Wi-Fi, and it was a total disaster. So yours is doing quite well.
Fantastic. Oh, that's
fab. Stay with us as long as you can. Aftab, can I bring you in to talk about brew coffee and how you are preparing for opening up indoors. And just to let everybody know as well, you are based in the fantastic purple flag city of Leicester in the East Midlands. Oh, Aftab, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Fab, excellent.
Oh, brilliant. So, hi, OJ. Thanks very much for having me on board. Yes, great to be back on the forum again on the ATCM. I thought I'd gone away, but I keep getting back on that. That's brilliant. Just a bit about myself. I was the managing director for one of the first business improvement districts in Rugby. I was there for 13 years. Went through 3 mandates, and I understand Rugby has got its 4th mandate, which I'm really pleased to hear. So my role as a MD of the business improvement district was to actually support the businesses in relation to everything issues that we were facing. I've been out of that role now for 1.5 years, so I now work for a coffee shop. We are a franchise, and our franchise currently has 4 stores, and in the 2 years I have been here, I've managed to open 2 more stores. We had a massive expansion plan of opening around 20 stores in about 2 years, and what's come about is COVID, and it kind of really has affected us in terms of our expansion plan. However, we have managed to open 2 more stores, one in Canada Water, one in Reading. We have got quite a number of franchises who have signed up and are very keen to be looking at new sites. The problem I'm facing at the minute is where do you want to open the shop? Because at the minute, when you go into the town centers, you see a lot of vacancies. And when you actually see a right spot that you think may be right, you just don't know whether that is the right location. Perhaps 2 years ago, that would have been the right place. However, at this moment in time, the anchor store that was nearby that particular vacancy shop is no longer there. So I'm having very difficult time in actually trying to look for particular sites for the franchisees, because normally in 2 years ago I could have spotted a site and I knew it would work for a coffee shop, but at this moment in time we're just like finger in there whether that would work or not. There's a kind of like a massive investment in relation to opening a new site. When I was in Rugby, when the shops were opening up, you didn't realize exactly how much investment they had to put into a particular site right from the moment they've signed the lease. So in terms of brew coffee, if we want to open a new site, the cost for like a 2,000 square foot store could be up to £200,000. So you can just see the amount of investment that it takes for any new businesses to come into the town centre. In relation to what we've been doing in the last 3 months, we've got 6 sites. Every site has got its own challenges. The ones that some have remained closed and are still closed, and they've finding it very difficult to open in these difficult circumstances because they're just not going to be able to cover the cost, and for that reason they have remained closed. We have other sites who've got fantastic seating outdoors, so they've kind of have managed to stay open. I've made the most from the outdoor seating, but not all sites have got that luxury with the outdoor seating areas. So on Monday, we're looking forward to that. All the sites will be open, and we, as a franchise, we've got to put all the measures in place in order to support the businesses to ensure that they can open safely. So the kind of work that we're having to put in is from a head office basis is kind of quite costing quite a fair amount. We wouldn't have had this cost if it wasn't for COVID. So things like OJ putting up additional signage to let customers know in terms of where they need to be queuing. We've had to train all of our staff again, so we've had to send manuals out in relation to letting them know exactly how to deal with customers when they come in. Things like floor markings and putting signage everywhere. If there's announcements to be made, we've had to take on extra people to actually manage the queues, because we've had the council down because sometimes it gets too busy, it gets very crowded. So we've had to take extra members of staff who have to stand outside and actually manage the customers. And we've had to make a lot of investment in barriers and guards in the store, just to protect the workers and as well, and encourage people to pay contactless. So you can see there's a lot of work that we've had to put in as a franchisor to ensure that our franchisees are able to follow the relevant guidelines. Yeah, the challenges next week is ensuring that our seating in all the store is in the put in a position that is safe and friendly. We got to ensure that all the signage is in place. There's a lot of challenges for our coffee shops, and we just have to make sure that our staff are all aware. I think your colleague Paul mentioned early on that the challenges he mentioned in terms of staffing are really true. We've got a shop in London, Walthamstow. We're looking for a store manager, and I've had a vacancy out for 2 months. We just can't find the staff, and we found some of the staff, but in relation to their experience in the hospitality sector is very minimal. So we've had to spend quite a lot of money in terms of training the people up. So it's cost, but the sales are not there. So it's kind of very difficult at the minute for all businesses. And I'm just hoping that in the next few weeks, things do ease down and the customers do safely return, and we can get things back to normality, and but amongst all the challenges.
Thanks a lot, Aftab. I mean, the staffing challenges sound really difficult. I know some of our members before have done some work around employment and recruiting to support smaller businesses. It sounds like, and Paul, feel free to come back in on this as well. Do you think that would be something which would be helpful from councils and bids, if there was any help in terms of coordinating employment support? I'm not sure all bids and councils can necessarily do that, but I know some have in the past, and some, especially in preparation of what the UK's withdrawal from the EU might mean for staff coming in from abroad. They were prepared to do more work on employment. Do you think that would help in the short term?
Oh, definitely. It's quite difficult at the minute, because normally when you put a vacancy out, you do get a lot of applications that have come from abroad and are looking for work and are very keen to work. And however, their applications have dried up. You put a vacancy out now, you are finding it very difficult to find the right people. Majority of the people who are applying are students who need the money. However, they are very restricted in the amount of hours they can work. Therefore, if you are looking for full-time workers who you want to train up and want the commitment from them, and that's the challenge is that we face. And unfortunately, in the hospitality sector, it is like a minimum wage industry, you kind of like putting yourselves up against people who are paying a little more, and at some point where the challenges will be that we're going to have to pay more to get the staff, and what would happen following that is we would have to raise our prices in order to ensure that our margins are met in the store. So there's quite a few challenges that we're going to face in the next couple of months, because we just had a pay rise. The minimum wage has gone up. We haven't increased our prices in the store, and just recently some of our suppliers have come back to us and said they can no longer hold the prices anymore, although they've tried it as long as they can, and we're going to have to put our prices up. And if we need to if they're putting their prices, we're going to have to put our prices up. So it's going to be very shaky over the next 2 months in relation to how the price industry is going to work as well. So if I give an example, if you're buying a coffee for $2.80, $2.90, we're going to have to take the price up to £3.5. So mentally, it's already above the £3 mark. So it's going to be very difficult to see how that plans out over the next few months.
That's really interesting. And Paul, what do you think as well on the issue of employment and more support around employment?
Well, I mean, I entirely agree. I think there is, if there is support that can be provided by councils and business improvement districts, then the industry would welcome that. I think, there is a short-term need, and there is that need to simply, find staff that can help venues to reopen and to reopen properly. I mean, the example I gave of a restaurateur that has 6 restaurants and can only open 4. I mean, he could open 6, but he wouldn't be able to staff them all properly, and so there would be substandard service. So I think finding those staff is critical. But I think the other challenge is that it could be the start of a skill drain in the sector, and that actually we will need to be looking at longer term solutions and encouraging more people to enter into a career in hospitality, and providing more opportunities through apprenticeship schemes and job programs, which could be done at a local level. But I think we're going to need some national support for that as well.
That's really interesting. I know there's been some discussions starting today in terms of the Queen's speech around what the future of skills and employment looks like post-COVID. So I guess a message for our entire network is we need to take that away and see what we can do at a national level and filter that down to a local level, because clearly skills and employment seem to be emerging as a real challenge. And we'd already identified that in terms of other areas of the nighttime economy, where things like security and vulnerability were an issue, because we've been concerned about pent-up demand for things like nightclubs and pubs, and not necessarily businesses not necessarily having all the necessary people with all the necessary skills still in place to be able to support people who might be additionally vulnerable going back and using the evening and nighttime economy. But I've just learned now that clearly those challenges extend to the hospitality sector as well. So I think that's a really important learning. So that's really useful. So thank you very much for that. Aftab, again for you, if you can stay on for as long as you want, and join in with the discussion as it evolves. We're still waiting on Michael Kill to join us from the Nighttime Industries Association, but I believe Josh, you are here with us. Josh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, fab, excellent. Thanks a lot for joining us. So, firstly, do you want to introduce yourself and the British Beer and Pub Association, and then tell us about some of the key challenges and issues for the reopening of pubs, which your members are currently experiencing?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Green. I'm Head of Public Affairs at the British Beer and Pub Association. So our membership is brewers and pub owning companies. Represent about 20,000 pubs across the UK, and about breweries that account for about 90% of the beer brewed in the UK. So firstly, I should just apologise for joining late. I was at another meeting, and if I'm repeating things that others have said, then either just bear with me, apologies, or just tell me to pipe down if it's getting too tiresome. As far as reopening is concerned, although some pubs have been able to open for the last I suppose almost exactly a month, and those that have opened have used that time to get to grips with the guidance and the new normal, if you like, although hopefully it won't be normal for too much longer. There are inevitably going to be issues with as a result of the indoor reopening from next Monday, and apart from anything else, there are still somewhere between 40 and 50% of venues, pubs that haven't been able to open at all in the last month because of a lack of usable outside space. So for those venues, this is their first reopening rather than a continuation of the April reopening. I think, practically speaking, the biggest single difference with the guidance this time round to where we were last summer is probably those issues with collecting everyone's details as opposed to just the lead person's details. Venues are going to have to deal with that extra burden, and they'll do so in a variety of ways. Some might effectively operate controlled entry, where they place someone on the door at all times to collect details. Others will continue to operate on 100% booking only policy and collect the details that way, and there will be others who simply collect details at the table or ensure that, that people scan in at the table. There are going to be other issues as well. Most pubs, well, all pubs will have undergone a deep clean in the run-up to reopening in April, and if they haven't done that, then they'll be doing that now in the run-up to reopening on the 17th. The next few days, obviously, we'll also see a ramping up of stock deliveries, particularly beer, and in advance of that, all the lines will need to be flushed and cleaned because of issues with Legionella. Other issues, things like putting in place one-way systems, restricting toilet capacities if necessary, and so on. Things like that were probably in place last year in the main, so will be familiar to many landlords and managers and pub staff. But obviously there's going to be a job to be done in ensuring that any new members of staff are engaged in the risk assessment process to ensure that they're fully aware of theirs and their pub's responsibilities. I guess at this point it's probably worth saying the issues with staffing, it's an interesting one. I mean, Aftab and Paul have both mentioned their getting hold of issues with getting hold of staff, and those experiences are worrying for us. It doesn't bode well for the pub trade, and we are starting to see some isolated reports of difficulties in that regard too. But obviously at the moment we're nowhere near full capacity in terms of operable space, and for that matter in terms of absolute numbers of venues open because of the issues I said I set out earlier about operable outside space. But so at the moment it's difficult really to judge the scale of what the issue really is there. But like I said, Aftab's and Paul's comments don't bode particularly well. I would also agree with Paul's point earlier about the job we as an industry have to do in encouraging young people of the value of a career in our trade, and that's not new to any of us. You know, we know that's been something we've had to work on for some time. So yeah, I mean, staffing, not seeing masses of reports come back from our members about that at the moment, but I suspect that's something that will escalate in fairly short order. I guess just to set out what we in terms of BBPA as a trade body are doing, we've issued a frequently asked questions document which is very regularly updated based on the government guidance that was published in April. We're currently on, I think, version 14 of that document for guidance that was issued about a month ago. But that I'm sure you could have, some elements of the guidance are a matter of interpretation, and we're regularly required by our members to clarify issues with Bays and other Whitehall teams, and that in turn requires us to clarify key issues with our members. So we regularly update those FAQ documents, and we've also issued other individual guidance documents about ventilation, which we all know is a key issue as we move towards the indoor reopening. And in the next few days, we'll be working really hard to promote those guidance documents with our members and do everything we can to ensure that information is cascaded down to the people that really matter, the publicans and their staff who are on the front line. I think we're reasonably hopeful that the kind of soft reopening that the outdoor opening first has given us will mean that we're well prepared, or as prepared as we can be for indoors, but we're under no illusions that there will be issues here and there that will crop up, and we'll do everything we can to ensure, where it concerns our membership at least, that those issues are dealt with swiftly. But I think I would make a plea to everyone for a sort of concerted effort to make it a partnership focused approach to things like this, and we and our members are really keen to work with stakeholders to ensure that issues are minimized wherever possible. And it's absolutely in our interests to have this go as smoothly as possible, and you'll all be aware of that. We don't want to be in a position where in a situation where pubs are highlighted as areas where the rules aren't followed and where it's not safe not safe to go. We need to make sure that pubs are seen as a safe place to socialise, and they are. So I think that's probably a summary, roughly speaking, of where we are. It's not exhaustive, but I don't think I could ever hope to be exhaustive without boring everyone to tears. But if there is anything anyone on the call thinks that we might be able to help with, then please do get in touch. OJ's got my contact details, so if you do feel free to pass those on to anyone. And if there are any pub specific issues that crop up, then do get in touch with us. As I said, we're very happy to engage where necessary.
Brill, thanks a lot, Josh. A quick question from me. We've heard in our previous virtual session, High Street Conversations, that there are, as expected, challenges around capacity with public transport. And I know when it comes to public transport, that is going to be a particular challenge when it comes to those businesses who are part of the evening and nighttime economy. So I just wanted to ask you quickly, do you have any concerns about being able to get people in and out relatively safely whilst adhering to social distancing?
Do you mean in and out of the venue, or to the venue?
Sorry, in and out of a town centre during the time.
That is that's clearly an issue that we are it's another issue that we really don't have a handle on yet, exactly what the long-term impact of that is. Clearly the guidance at the moment is still work from home where you can, and until the 21st of June, I think we're probably anticipating that will be in place. What we don't really know yet is what kind of activity that has displaced from big city centres into suburban areas, and whether it means that ultimately there's a gain in some areas and a loss of trade in other areas. That may be what it transpires as, but we don't really know that, because towns and cities are still pretty, footfall is very low in those areas. But clearly for pubs, public transport is a big issue, because a lot of people in towns and cities don't drive to their local, and if there aren't people in offices, there is going to be much less footfall for city centre pubs. So yes, we're anticipating it will be an issue, but at the moment we don't really know what the scale of that issue is going to be.
No worries. Thanks a lot for that. That's really insightful. You're welcome to stay as long as you can for the rest of the conversation. I'm just going to bring in our final contributor now, because I know he's got to leave at 4:30. So Michael Kill, are you there?
I am, OJ. Thank you for inviting me. Sorry, it's a bit of a smash and grab visit, but
you are going to be one of the busiest people in the country, probably even busier than I. So all is forgiven. So do you want to, for the benefit of those people that have yet had the pleasure of meeting you on one of these virtual sessions, introduce yourself and then take us through? I think there's two things really. Your members who are able to reopen, love to hear about the issues affecting them. And probably just as importantly, if not more importantly, I know you're going to have some members who probably don't have any idea yet when they're able to open, what the sentiment is there, and what issues they are facing.
Thanks, OJ. My name's Mike Kill. I'm the Chief Executive for the Nighttime Industries Association. We have about 1,400 businesses in terms of our membership, which equates to between 8,000 and 10,000 physical units or businesses that are operational. We represent businesses that trade between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, which are broken down into sort of 4 key areas. Workforce, which is probably one of the important ones, with employees and freelancers and contractors, etc. We've then got tertiary businesses that don't really have licenses but operate and rely on the nighttime economy heavily. Then we've got secondary businesses. I don't know, I've done this the other way around, but secondary businesses, which are about operators that take the predominance of their business from the hours of 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. and then also operate within the day in different hours. And then we've got the core of nighttime economy businesses that penultimately take all of their revenue between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. So that's as simple as that in terms of who we represent and what we do. We work with BBPA, UK Hospitality, many of the other sort of trade bodies in different guises, slightly different. We kind of got our foot not only in the business sector in terms of BAYS, but also in the cultural sector in terms of DCMS. So we work quite heavily with things like electronic music, but also work heavily with casinos and theatre and some of the other businesses that contribute as a wholesome nighttime economy would represent. In terms of businesses coming to the 17th, the feedback that we're getting from people is very similar to what has already been represented by Josh. I mean, there is a little bit of a tentative nature on how things are going to be impacted in terms of the guidances. I think quite rightly so, there has been this soft launch element in terms of outdoors, although I was joking with an MP the other day who I turned around and said, uncanny how you launched it in the middle of April showers, which for an outdoor is just not helpful at all. Almost a standing joke in cabinet, I'm sure. But as we move forward, I think there is this, this hope, this positivity that we're moving in the right direction. Social distancing is always going to have a challenge in terms of viability. So I think there are, some suitable concerns in terms of the financial position and how long that can be sustained. And also there are some challenges with regard to not only supply chain, but also the staffing. We've heard very recently through surveys that up to 70% of staff coming back off furlough have decided they don't want to re-engage in terms of the businesses. There is a lack of confidence. Similar, there is a lack of confidence in terms of landlords and what we're talking about in terms of industry. So, when you talk about this, there is, and I was on a call, a ministerial call early in the week, where we were highlighting some of the issues around sort of resilience, but some of the biggest challenges is staff are concerned that their jobs are not safe, they're not secure. Landlords are concerned that their commitment to hospitality and late night economy are not long-term and not secure. So we've got a big job to do in terms of cementing our position and moving forward, in a very emphatic way, and really ensuring that the Prime Minister, Cabinet and government stick to these guidelines and make sure that that is the last lockdown that we see, because it is going to be to the benefit of the industry, and we've got some way to building confidence, a little easier in terms of hospitality, but not as straightforward, but definitely with the late night economy, the likes of nightclubs, etc. It has been a huge challenge for most. And as you quite rightly have heard, in different environments like events, the festival sector, the indemnification of their events, given the sort of 200 to 300K some of these events have to put in to sustain their position against COVID, which is not being covered by any insurers at the moment, is creating some huge concern. So, I mean, moving on to probably the toughest of areas in terms of business is the late night economy, the late bars, the venues, the nightclubs, dare I say it, although I know that Mr. Johnson has suggested that it is part of the narrative. It is almost a sliding scale and a concern that we need to ensure that we're going to be able to deliver from the 21st of June. We have seen the pilots that have gone through some 2 weeks ago. I actually lost a week, if I'm going to be honest, when I was talking earlier. But the pilots were very positive. The feedback that we've got so far is there were a couple of indications in terms of the lateral flow tests and the PCRs after, particularly Sefton Park, with Melvin Ben, who was on a call with earlier, who's the lead for Festival Republic and the Live Nation group. But on top of that, the circus nightclub show or club show went very well. The biggest challenge they had with all of this is getting people entering to take a lateral flow test. And that's reiterated around this whole testing mechanism. And we entered into a conversation earlier, which was quite interesting, around COVID status certificates and how that's going to play its part. We've recently seen France come forward suggesting that anything under 1,000 capacity wouldn't require it, but over 1,000 capacity would. There is a position being undertaken by mass gatherings in terms of the sort of 10,000 plus gatherings that this is a route back and a safe route back, although a short-term solution. But there is quite a considerable challenge with regard to not only the logistics, but the premise to which this would be delivered domestically amongst pubs, bars, restaurants, nightclubs, venues, etc., of varying sizes. So there are still some debate. Michael Gove, we have had some input into how that report is moving forward. We are looking to get the data from the pilot tests in the next week. I believe it's, well, either this Thursday or next Thursday, and then the public announcement with regard to the pilot test data by the end of this month. So all of that is going to give us a very clear understanding on how things are moving forward. It is very clear from government that once that's presented to Cabinet, that they are going to release around the 14th for the 21st, which doesn't give us much time to plan and get things in order. Although I don't know many businesses that are going to open on the 21st unless they can pivot pretty quickly, which leaves us to either late bars and commercial nightclubs as a whole. So I think from our perspective, I think we're shaping up positively. I think the pilots have delivered, have been delivered very well. I think with Melvin being part of that and Youssef and Rich McGuinness being part of the circus side, they've been received very well. The data that they had was fantastic. There is, I believe, still a stage 2 process for this. I am aware that there is a camping festival that's being planned for June, which Melvin, I believe, is part of. And there are some other environments in terms of nightclubs that are going to be looked at, because as you can appreciate, one club show is not going to take into account the likes of a VIP sedentary environment that you may get in Greater Manchester, Liverpool or London, the same way that you've got the mixed use of AEG Academy Group that do live and then club shows later. And then you've got environments like LGBT environments, which are a different sort of movement and interaction with people right the way throughout. And all of these have been presented to government as another option to move forward. And we await that opportunity with bated breath. But at present, positive, tentative about the 21st, but positive that the 17th is going to move forward. The impact of the 17th is going to have a huge consideration for how things move on from there. And we're probably going to have to wait for 2 weeks after that. And that's going to correlate with the outcome for the data from pilots and then the delivery around the 14th or the week before, where we'll understand what the 21st looks like. But in all intensive purposes, it's looking positive that those restrictions are going to be removed. The only concern that everyone has, which I think resonates, and I hope Josh would be in the same camp, is what does it look like for those greater capacity units that could, with all intensive purposes, could be part of the caveat on capacity and the way that COVID status certificates are going to be used within the domestic environment, which is causing concern given the fact that most of the core of our age group that go to those events are not going to be vaccinated until the end of July, and the fact that lateral flow tests are really not conducive to home testing, and it is very challenging logistically to ensure that people do it. So barriers will be a huge issue, and it will kill spontaneity in terms of town centres. But I hope that gives you a sort of broad encompassment of what's going on. And as you're probably mostly aware, we've also just taken Scottish Government to court for a different reason altogether. So, but I'll pause there for any questions. I think you're on.
Yeah, sorry. See, after me telling Aftab off about that earlier, I've done it myself. Yeah, that was going to be my first question. Might be my only question. Please tell us more about the legal action against the Scottish Government, or I believe the intention to take legal action against the Scottish Government.
So we've gone through a whole process of working alongside the hospitality groups, but what has been very clear is as the unlocking of hospitality or the core of hospitality happens, there is this resonating position where nighttime economy almost will be left in a very isolated position. So we had to undertake how we would move forward demonstrate a bit of strength in terms of unity, so that we could push the Scottish Government into giving us several things. One is an indicative date for opening, which still is very challenging, even at level 0. It is tough, and although we've had some consultation with Scottish Government, it's just not, it hasn't delivered anything that of any substance that will give us, support. Given the fact that over the next 2 to 3 weeks and the 17th coming around, there is a question of proportionality, and the fact that Scottish Government, given its reliance on tourism in particular, is finding that the bookings for Airbnbs, hotels, festivals, etc., is all starting to ebb massively. So what's happening is that investment from south of the border is affecting Scottish economy massively, and there is a huge amount of pressure for Nicola Sturgeon and government to consider their position, and the fact that they are talking very clearly about zero COVID environments. And Jason Leach, who is their chief scientific or medical officer, is highlighting that nightclubs are a very difficult thing to address. So we decided collectively that we would move forward, given the fact that the hospitality group or other trade bodies were obviously moving in a direction where opening was happening, or they were getting some traction, and nighttime economy just didn't seem to be moving quick enough. So we decided to put in a pre-action protocol to look to challenge not only the basic right to trade, also the indicative dates in terms of the roadmap and the proportionality to measures and what evidence would suggest that they had to support that. We've recently had communication from them, highlighting consultation, but not really answering questions. We're expecting a letter this week. We have brought on a gentleman called Roddy Dunlop. He's one of the top QCs in the country. And he's the Dean of Advocates. He's also the gentleman that took on Alex Salmon's case on behalf of Scottish Government. So he's a well-respected QC. And we've been working very hard on focusing pre-election on the 39,000 jobs, youth jobs, which are being understated and not being considered given the lack of indicative date to reopen the nighttime economy. So a lot of our work has been very above the line press-wise, but it's been putting pressure on the government to consider the wider impact, economic, cultural and community impact of how the nighttime economy will be affected, and tourism, given the decisions and protocols that are being undertaken, which are very restrictive. But what we're asking really is an indicative date and evidence to suggest that it's proportionate. But we also need to take account of the likes of what Wales is doing and also what England is doing. So as we move forward and we reopen, there is a wider gap between the proportionality that is happening in England compared to Scotland, and then the economic impact in terms of tourism. So I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of the way we're moving forward. But I believe they've got until the end of this week to respond.
That's really useful. And for me, that speaks to a wider problem, which actually is probably the very core raison d'etre of Purple Flag. And that is a misunderstanding of the economic benefits of the evening and nighttime economy. I think for me, traditionally, historically, it's seen as something to be suppressed and controlled and regulated. And I actually spoke a little bit about this in our panel debate last week. With Sylvia Oates, is that it is all about regulation, and very little of the thinking is about economic growth. And I think what you've just explained to me makes perfect sense. I think when it comes to evening and nighttime economy, it is a trigger for further investment. It is something which attracts young people to a particular area to live, to study, to work, and has massive long-term benefits for all other elements of the local economy. So, the way it's treated, you can tell through the pandemic, the way it's treated is it is not seen as other parts of the economy are, which is a real shame.
I think the sad bit about it is most of the narrative that comes out, and this is something that we've tried to address, is about safer networks or harm reduction. It's giving you a preconception of issue, and not a positive narrative around how it does impact culturally, how it impacts in terms of youth culture, and the positive that it puts in. And I appreciate that it's got some challenges, but so is the daytime and retail, but they don't call it harm reduction for retail so much. It's more of a collaborative nature to the way it's approached. So I think there's definitely some work to be done. And I think that's as much our industry as it is regulators and town centre managers and representatives of key stakeholders that need to come together and really start to understand our industry as a whole, because I think there's still a lot of misconception.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, Mike. I know you've got to disappear, so thanks a lot for staying so long with us as it is. Yeah, really appreciate it, and hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers, bye. Right, everyone. So I think that was really interesting. I think there's a few things Mike brought up there as well. So the pilot events that have taken place in England will be followed in Wales, which we've had confirmation on today. So the Welsh government are looking at pilot events of their own. The Irish government are also considering pilots for different cultural events. So I think the Irish government were looking at about June, July time for those to take place, which is interesting. And it sounds like there hasn't been much movement in Scotland on that. I think just looking down the list of attendees, Sunil, can I bring you in on what you've just heard and your thoughts around the reintroduction of things like larger events, nightclubs, and key aspects of the evening and nighttime economy? And if you got any thoughts or concerns, or if it's just too soon yet to digest everything.
Yeah, I was just starting to actually do a question to you directly, but as you brought me in, shut that door. Certainly where I work at the moment, there is a hesitancy on the part of the evening and nighttime economy in terms of the level of demand and everything else that comes with it. Obviously, they are preparing for the best rather than the worst. But the proof in the pudding will be as of Monday. Some people are not going to be opening on Monday, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. It's interesting what Michael was saying about the legal action. And I just wondered whether that was just the pubs and the nightclubs and the likes, or is it going to include cinemas? Is it going to include theatres? Because the theatres are obviously one of the sort of key aspects of the nighttime economy that tend to be forgotten about, bringing in the wider population, if you like, that's not always going to the nightclubs or whatever. So yeah, I think we just need to revisit the whole issue of what the evening and nighttime economy actually represents. Going back a number of years, probably a good 15, 20 years, I seem to remember there was a figure of something like 65% of a place, a town, or whatever, the sort of the impact, the economic advantages of having a decent nighttime economy was like 65% of the whole economy there. So I don't know whether that's something we need to go back to, particularly with the increased leisure time. But I think there is a hesitancy on the part of the Scottish government as well in being deliberately slow. And I think that's partly to do with the election. Hopefully things will start to move on quickly, particularly if this legal action is going to be coming to the fore now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, just in terms of figures, I picked this up from the panel debate, which I was involved in with Mike last week. So this was a presentation that was given by Ali Turnham, who is part of our Purple Flag panel, based on his workings, and I think this was for 2019. Turnover for the evening and nighttime economy in the UK is worth 92 billion. Gross value added is directly for businesses directly in the evening and nighttime economy is 32 billion, and it directly supports 1.5 million jobs. Then when you start to look at the wider supply chain and include that, that 1.5 million jobs extends to 3.2 million jobs, and the gross value added is 72 billion a year, and hospitality sector in itself is the third largest employer in the UK, which is massive. It's absolutely massive. So I can absolutely understand the disappointment where sectors such as this aren't given the proper credibility which they deserve as being a key part of the economy. So it is something we've got to challenge and make sure we can overcome culturally.
Yeah, I think I mentioned at one of the forums last week about restaurants being able to serve food indoors but not alcohol, and yet outside you could drink till whatever time. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, the weather has not been conducive to sitting outside to drink, albeit we've seen a few sort of photographs and the likes on through social media about people trying to do anything they can to drink outdoors, which I think is a bit over the top. But anyway, people must be desperate. It is going to be a tough year, particularly with not. One thing that kind of does worry me certainly up here is the sort of the nightclubs and how they are going to be able to manage that sector of the population, frankly, because that is not conducive to not being socially distant, if you like. Double negative. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Thanks a lot, Sunil. Sorry, for those new to Purple Flag Forum, so Sunil is former ATCM Scotland chair with Fife Council and is currently supporting Dunfermline, the fabulous Dunfermline town centre. Can I bring in, let's get a Welsh perspective. Dougie from Swansea Bid, are you there? And if you are, can you give us an overview of the work the excellent Swansea Bid has been doing in terms of getting ready for the reopening of the full reopening of the hospitality sector?
So, well, first thing that we're doing is tomorrow evening, we've been working quite closely with our licensing department. Tomorrow evening, we'll be hosting a webinar with all of the nighttime industry, our hospitality forum that we work with, licensing, city centre management and the police, just to bring everybody up to speed on what the regulations are going to be, ready for Monday. The biggest battle we've got at the moment is whether licensing themselves are going to know what the legislation is going to be by 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. We did it previously when we opened outdoors, and licensing had a presentation ready to go, which they then had to dump at 4 o'clock because all the regulations changed, which made it for an interesting webinar when you're trying to work out how to use Teams at the same time. But yeah, so that's the primary thing that we're doing. One other thing that was mentioned earlier on was somebody was talking about employability and getting jobs back into the city centre. We have, excuse me, that employment is one of my previous lives. So we have a page on the BID website where we list for free all of the jobs available in the city centre when people give them to us. And we also have 2 colleges and training providers in the city, our city centre, which we liaise with them to match them to people who are looking for training schemes and all of that side of stuff. So there's a lot of work going on with that, but the primary thrust at the moment is the webinar tomorrow. So if you see me fiddling around with the computer while we'll be doing this, it's because I'm trying to reteach myself how to do it for tomorrow evening.
That makes sense. Honestly, writing the slides today, every 5 minutes there's something being announced in the news which changes my presentation slide. So I share your pain. I really do share your pain. I don't know if we're lucky enough to get a double dose of Wales as well. Ian from Cardiff, are you there? I think Ian might have had to move on to another meeting. In which case, can I go north of England? Katie from Darlington. Katie, are you there? Oh no, maybe not. What about Nicola in Putney? Third time lucky.
Sorry, I am here.
Hi, how you doing? So how's things
Yeah,
going in
good,
terms
thank
of
you.
reopening?
So we have I think they're all opening on Monday, bar one, reopening. And there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, and I suppose just hoping that they're going to be as busy as they were pre-COVID days. Obviously, with all the social distancing measures in place. I think one of the main things I suppose that they've been moaning about is, I know you discussed this already, but lack of staff, and also the need for more staff to be able to put all the different measures in place and the table service in place. So the additional costs that they're having to incur to put those sort of safety measures in place, and wondering how long that they're going to be required for, and training the staff, which most of them have obviously started already, so they're kind of in place now. But yeah, I think a lot of excitement we've got going. Putney had a very thriving nighttime economy pre-COVID. We've lost one very big bar during lockdown, and we've lost to Carluccio's. So we are, we have lost two fairly significant venues, but we're hopeful. Yeah, sorry, rambling. But yeah.
No, it's good to hear that there's positivity. I think positivity right now is all I can really ask for. Sunil, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, just a quick point that I raised, I think, at a meeting last week, one of these forums, is for Paul Shaw, Restaurant Collective. A true story from last week. I spoke to a local restaurant, independent restaurant, lovely restaurant. They've obviously borrowed money. It's now time to kind of pay certainly the interest and whatever. So they had a call from HMRC to discuss all of that. And she wasn't quite ready to sort of start paying back because they've only just started to open and trading again. And the HMRC person actually said to them, well, if you can't pay, sack your staff. Now, that is unacceptable. And she said, I will now record you. Would you like to repeat that again? So that there is an issue about how HMRC might be approaching certainly the smaller restaurants. It's just something to kind of bear in mind. You might get other kind of similar stories. I don't know, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're being a bit brutal in where I think the smaller businesses are concerned. I'm not sure that larger restaurant chains are getting quite the same treatment, but same as it ever was, I fear.
And to add to that, I think what Mike from NTIA has made me concerned about is when he says landlords are starting to get a bit jittery as well in terms of rental arrears. That does make me concerned. And of course, for England, we've talked about this before, but there's a certain amount of businesses that will now be exposed to conversions to residential without planning permission because of the introduction of permitted development rights, which will take place from the 1st of August. So it's not necessarily all businesses, but restaurants and cafes are included. So that does make me a little bit nervous. So whether it's HMRC, whether it's landlords, banks, I am concerned about whether we get a pragmatic approach to allowing these businesses to rebuild their balance sheets, which will take time. There's no easy answers to it. It will take time. It will take patience. But I think for the benefit of the wider economy, it needs to be done, and it needs to be done in the right way. So that's my little rant over anyway. Let me see if I can bring in one more person before I do a quick roundup at the end. Ed Weymouth, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, mate. How's it going? Do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and tell me what work have you been doing around the reopening of hospitality? How's it going?
Well, yeah, we're trying to be really involved with the nighttime economy, especially at the moment because we are putting in our entry for the Purple Flag for this year. So we're engaging with Pub Watch, restaurants, and obviously our local bid. Yeah, like you said, there's so much going on. It's changing day by day, and yeah, but one of the main issues we've had that's come to light at the moment is public toileting. We've got a bit of a war on whiz at the moment going on, and it's just like it's occurred out of all the pubs being closed, obviously, and so we're from the late nighttime economy, 11 o'clock, going through to the early morning, where we're having the general public sort of they've got nowhere to go because the pubs aren't open. So what we're hoping is that come next week when the pubs are open, it's actually going to ease the pressure on that's going on High Street at the moment. Because otherwise we're going to have to start coming in with a bit of a heavy stick. Through engagement, what we've been doing is, yeah, we've just been offering support from our from the economic officers within Dorset Council, making sure is that do the businesses have the support they need, and if they don't feel they're getting it, we're going out of our way to find that support for them, really.
Yeah, fab. That's really useful information. I think the challenge of toilets, that's just been, to be fair, that's been a nightmare across our network throughout the pandemic. And you're right. I think when you've got outdoor hospitality open but not indoors, you know, that's been really difficult. I know it's something which has occupied the minds of a lot of people, and it's not even a strategic issue, it's an operational issue. Sure. But it's a real challenge, and it makes a massive difference. Makes a massive difference.
Yeah, it does. We've actually engaged with the people who are in the street drinking, and they're actually locals from the pubs that go down. They're locals every day, but because they've got nowhere to go, they just all congregate in public places, and they just stay there drinking. So they all say that as soon as the pubs are open, they're going to go back to their old routine. So we are banking on really that. Yeah, we've got. You know, this is all going to be rectified as of next week. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And let's fingers crossed for a good reopening. So just before we finish off, just a few more things from me. So just to remind everybody, we've heard about the challenges around staffing, which sound particularly difficult. And I think Mike mentioned that based on a survey, 70% of staff coming back from furlough just don't want to engage with the nighttime sector anymore, which is really concerning. There is really cost-effective staff training out there available from World Host, which is part of People First. So I think it's £5 per member of staff to do online training. So that's www.peoplefirst.co.uk. So that's World Host, and it's called Keeping Customers Safe. So do advise your businesses about that if you think it would help. Remember as well, and I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again, free customer engagement through Google. So anybody with a smartphone anywhere in the world can make sure they view a business's profile and understand things like opening times, social distancing measures, anything really effective way for businesses to communicate with their customers, absolutely free. Those businesses just need to go online and update their business profile. So if they just Google My Business, the website they need will come up, and they can either add their own business profile, or if they already have a business profile there, then they can take ownership of it and amend it, which I know many businesses have done and found it really helpful in terms of that visibility, that free visibility with customers. We're continuing to look at the idea of a night out gift card with MyConnect. So the next consultation session will take place on Thursday at 10 a.m. So join in if you like. On the same day, we're keeping busy with our events. So same day later on, 3:30, ATCM Ireland returns for the path ahead. So that meeting is going to continue with the discussion around reopening, and that will be open to ATCM and Purple Flag members across the island of Ireland. So both the Republic of Ireland, but also Northern Ireland as well. So bookings for that are open, and email regarding that has already gone out. Next week, more events. Big one here. So the all-party parliamentary group for town centres will focus on something I've just discussed, which is permitted development rights. That will take place on the 20th of May, which is Thursday at 10 a.m. If your MP happens to be based in England, if you are concerned about permitted development rights and the potential eviction of businesses come the 1st of August to replace that use with residential, then please invite your MP along to that. The more MPs we can get at this meeting, the better, the more influence we can have on this conversation. So we'll hope to be joined by some of the biggest industry bodies across planning, property, retail for that particular meeting. So do please be aware of that. And High Street Conversations will also return on the same day as well. So 3:30 Thursday next week, 20th of May. Again, the conversation will be around reopening. So that is something which will continue. So that's everything from me. Thank you everyone for all your contributions. It's been really useful, lots of useful information. Paul, Aftab, Mike and Josh, you've been excellent, great contributions. Good luck for everybody that's looking forward to reopening on Monday, and I hope to see you all soon.